The DC fandom has gotten me, and well, majority of other comic book nerds, hyped for not only one, but two DC games. Warner Bros. Montreal are back with Gotham Knights, while Rocksteady are back after 5 years of silence with Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. While we sit back and wait for both of these titles to release, I thought why not go back to where it all started, and make my way through each entry in the series, and take a look at how these games adapted, evolved, and created something unforgettable. The year is 2009. The MCU has just started turning its wheels. The Dark Knight is a year old and people are still loving it. Fuck, people are still loving it now. It was also a pretty solid year for games. We got Assassin's Creed 2, we got Left 4 Dead 2, we got Infamous, Prototype, Modern Warfare 2, Borderlands, and Wii Sports Resort. While most of these games were great, I'm not a COD or Borderlands fan, Rocksteady released a comic book video game that defied all previous comic book games, and that they didn't suck ass. Well, at least at the time, as majority of comic book video games were movie tie-ins.
Look, I have to go on a business trip.
What trip? There's nothing on your calendar.
Just came up.
Batman Arkham Asylum's story is pretty straightforward, and for whatever reason, if you've never played this on older or current gen consoles, then be warned, not only will I be going into spoiler territory, breaking down boss fights and more, but you need to do yourself a favor and check this out. Arkham Asylum starts off with a pretty straightforward and easy to understand premise. Now the Joker attacks City Hall and is caught by Batman and is taken to Arkham Asylum. Though Batman can't help but notice that Joker gives himself up pretty easy, and not only does Batman hand him over, but he personally escorts him into Arkham alongside Commissioner Gordon. Just after you hand over Joker to the Arkham security, he breaks free and assaults a guard and a medical officer, causing Batman to take the bait and go after him, but gets himself caught in Arkham.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman! I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously!
Joker deliberately wanted to get caught and sent back to Arkham, as Joker and Harley Quinn have taken control of the mental facility, releasing its inmates, and have all sorts of activities planned for Batman. From here, it's up to you as Batman to not only stop the Joker, but to put other super criminals back in their cells. Now what starts off as a simple trap turns into something completely different. The Joker has been working alongside a scientist named Penelope Young, who's created a more deadly and permanent formula of Bane's wonder muscle drug Venom, this time known as Titan. Joker plans on releasing Titan-enhanced goons across Gotham, as well as dumping Titan into the city's water supply.
But wait! There's more!
The Joker's goons have also transferred from Blackgate Prison to Arkham Asylum, which was also planned by the clowned Prince of Crime. So not only will you chase after and stop the Joker, go up against the Rogues Gallery, but all of Joker's goons and mental patients of the asylum are loose. There's a load for Batman to do, so shit, let's get on with it. Now, if you've played the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game or the Shadow of Mordor series or even some Assassin's Creed games, then the combat will be very familiar. Well, because this is the godfather of that style of gameplay. Before you start beating the shit out of enemies or striking from the shadows though, you'll walk the halls of Arkham Asylum, escorting Joker and even seeing some familiar Batman villains along the way.
What's it doing?
I've got your scent, Batman. I will hunt you down.
Though nothing really happens in regards to gameplay besides walking during this portion of the game, because it provides a heap of plot development and detail. You'll go through the metal and weapon detectors, through processing facilities, through heavy security, and deep into the heart of Arkham before Joker breaks free and you start to chase him. Immediately after Joker frees himself, he opens up nearby security cells where his goons will start to, well, attempt to take you out. One button will activate the general melee attacks, while pressing another button will counter incoming attacks. Now, I revisited my time with Arkham Asylum on the Xbox One remaster, but the controls are basically identical for the PlayStation 4. The X button on the Xbox will attack enemies, while hitting Y when the enemy has a flashing icon above their head will then counter their attacks. The combat design of Arkham is pretty straightforward, and the game will slowly increase the number of enemies you deal with as you progress during the story. As you start to get used to the combat, Arkham Asylum will give you a new enemy variant to which you'll need to learn and adapt to. You'll have the standard enemies that will try to punch or hit you with a melee object like bats, no puns included, or pipes before you go up against enemies with knives and stolen security equipment like tasers and machine guns. Enemies with knives will require Batman to stun them with his cape before he can start dealing damage to them. Goons with tasers need to be vaulted over and hit from behind, otherwise Batman will take damage from trying to hit them in the front. And, well, enemies with guns need to be targeted first because they can really fuck you up. Besides these standard enemy variants, you'll also go against the Joker's Titan-infused goons. These behemoths will deal a fair amount of damage if they hit you, but they're incredibly stupid. Now they'll get angry and charge at you, and with a quick press of the left trigger or L2, Batman will throw a batarang at the Titan's head. This of course will blind them and cause them to run into a wall. From here they'll be stunned and you can deal damage to them and even climb on their backs to attack other standard goons or Titans in the area. This combat all leads up to your first boss fight, and that's going up against Dr. Penelope Young's lab rat for the Titan formula, and that's Bane. The real Bane, not the shit that we got in Batman and Robin or The Dark Knight Rises. Bane will work exactly like going up against Titan enemy types, but he'll do more damage, and he's cooler because, you know, it's Bane. Now you'll have to deal with Bane until you knock his health down and remove some of his venom tubing before some of the Joker's goons will try to come in and take you out at the same time. Thankfully though, just like Titan goons, Bane will damage them if they get in his way. You'll defeat Bane and the story will naturally start to unravel, as Bane wants to not only break the bat, and honestly that's all he ever wants to fucking do, but he also wants to go after Dr. Penelope Young. Now I will admit the design for Bane in the Arkham series is a bit over the top, but the detail in the design is pretty rad. His venom injector is actually infused into his spine rather than the traditional design of the injector controls on his wrist and the tube going into the back of his head. Yes, Bane is huge, but at least he's actually smarter than his character was in Batman and Robin, and isn't whatever the fuck Tom Hardy was. Now we'll get more of a traditional Bane later on, but this Bane is still deadly as fuck and a nice spin take on it. Though Batman isn't just like a brawler, say like Captain America, and you'll have Predator moments in the game. And yes, Rocksteady mean Predator, like the movie Predator. You'll hide up onto gargoyles, under floor grates, and hidden in the shadows as you systematically take out armed goons. Majority of the time as you do this though, the Joker, who, as a reminder, is in control of the facility, will commentate on the status of his goons as well as how you're performing.
Well, you know what? I have a good feeling about this. You guys really have what it takes to beat the Bat. Not.
As Batman, you'll be able to use your grappling gun to shoot yourself up onto gargoyled vantage points, and you'll be able to use your cowl's detective vision to see through walls and spot not only enemies, but what variants of enemies are out there. Enemies armed with guns will be marked with a red skeleton, while other enemies will be blue. These Predator moments will actually have you feel like Batman as you're striking from the shadows and striking fear into criminals. Honestly, these moments are my favourite in the Arkham series. You'll not only be able to sneak up behind enemies and quietly knock them out, you'll also be able to glide down and kick them from above, hide in floor grates, and even invert yourself and grab enemies from above, hanging them from their feet on gargoyles. Though just like the combat mechanics where there'll be different enemy variants, the game will throw more curveballs in your direction in the Predator mode. Basically, enemies with assault rifles will be able to shoot you on gargoyles if they see you retreat to the gargoyles, but the game will also throw heart rate collars on the Joker's henchmen and proximity bombs on the gargoyles. With the collars, when you quietly take out a goon, their neck collar will start crying, alerting every other goon in the room that someone has been taken out. The Joker will also make fantastic commentary on how his henchmen are constantly failing.
You a couple of simple tasks. Make cash talk, find Dr. Young, and her notes. Has anyone actually checked off one of those tasks yet?
As you start to get used to the collars towards the end of the game, the Joker instructs his men to strap explosives to the gargoyles in the area. Now if you go onto a gargoyle, you'll have a brief moment to get off before it explodes. And no, not that get off. Not only will you take damage if you're on the gargoyle, but the explosion will alert everyone in the room that you've just set a bomb off and they're aware of your position. Though it wouldn't be Batman without having gadgets, and for some enemies and boss fights, these gadgets are a necessity. You'll start off with the must-haves of Batman's utilities, and that's his sharp repellent spray. Nah mate, it's just his batarangs, his grappling gun, and his detective vision. Batarangs, as already hinted, are mainly used for combat, but at the start of the game they're actually used for a bit of puzzling, like flipping switches on the other side of a room from a remote location. You'll also be able to upgrade Batman and his Batarangs to a point where they'll be able to be remote controlled, throw 3 Batarangs at one time, or even a sonic Batarang that affects the neck collars of Joker's goons. Now there's a fair amount of exploration in Arkham Asylum, and you'll not only be exploring the holding facilities but also the Arkham Mansion, the Botanical Gardens, the Visitor Center, and even the sewers. The grappling gun will allow Batman to reach high vantage points where he can't jump up to. As you progress, you'll unlock upgrade attachments to turn the grappling gun into the Batclaw. The Batclaw is used for pulling enemies closer to you and pulling ventilation grates off the wall in hard to reach spots, allowing Batman to then use his grappling gun to that point. The final upgrade for the Batclaw has it shoot 3 high-powered claws out instead of 1, and you'll be able to pull down weakened wall structures, or be able to shoot 3 Batclaws onto 3 goons at once, pulling them off a ledge. The Detective Vision is basically a X-ray mode that will allow Batman to see through walls, locate enemies in the room, and in some moments of the game, examine items and track targets. At certain points through the campaign, you need to track the location of Commissioner Gordon and Harley Quinn and others. You'll use the Detective Vision to, say, scan whiskey traces and then follow that trace through the facility. It is a pretty cool idea for a 2009 game, and it reminds you that Batman is actually a detective and not a superhero. The Detective Vision was my most used gadget by far and comes in handy with targeting enemies in combat and in Predator moments. You'll even be able to see vital signs of NPCs and monitor their heart rate. Security guards and police will be killed by Joker's goons, but with every enemy Batman takes out, they'll be marked as unconscious. Outside of these gadgets, you'll get even more from the trunk of the Batmobile, like the explosive gel, which before you unlock the triple Batclaw upgrade is used for blowing open weak walls, but can also be used for traps for unsuspecting enemies in Predator moments of the game. But to be fair, this was probably my least used gadget in Arkham Asylum. Its uses are many, but I prefer to stalk my prey in Predator mode and use the explosive gel only when I needed to use it. You'll also have the high-tech cryptographic sequencer, Jesus, which is a device used to break complex locks and security devices. Now it's a pretty straightforward device that will simply just have you position both thumbsticks in a certain direction until the screen goes bright green, but the device won't tell you what direction the sticks need to be facing, and you'll need to randomly move them around on the controller until you figure it out. The last gadget Batman gets from his '89 movie, and that's the line launcher. It's basically a zipline gun that requires 2 walls to attach to and will allow Batman to go over terrain he normally couldn't. As you start to unlock more gadgets and upgrades, you'll be able to access areas that Batman previously couldn't reach. Arkham Asylum works a little bit like a sandbox. Nothing as massive as GTA, not by that margin, but you will explore open areas like the gardens and the cemeteries and frequently move between buildings on the island. You'll be able to glide around on the map slightly from high vantage points, zip up to rooftops and solve Riddler puzzles. You see, the Riddler has left trophies all over the island and, well, riddles around Arkham Island as well. Trophies will reward you with character models to explore in the menu, but challenge rooms to complete as well. The riddles, however, make Batman Arkham Asylum more like Easter egg galore. Being Arkham Asylum, there'll be Easter eggs like Mr. Freeze or Two-Face's cell, Scarecrow's hidden room in the ventilation shafts, and even small things and references to like characters on whiteboards. You'll scan the riddles by holding down the button that flips through Batman's Detective Vision. Scanning the riddles will not only complete a riddle, but it'll provide you with a character bio of that character in the menu. Now, while some characters may not appear in this game, you can at least see the awesome artwork of the character in the menus. Now, it wouldn't be a Batman game without his Rogues Gallery, probably the best Rogues Gallery in all of comic books. As already mentioned, as you chase after the Joker, you'll face off against some of Batman's greatest foes, and these boss fights will break up the game, as outside of boss fights, the Arkham series is just combat, Predator, and traversal. Another great thing about the Rocksteady Arkham game is that most of their characters are voiced by the returning cast of Batman the Animated Series. The Batman Kevin Conroy's here alongside Luke fucking Skywalker Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin's last appearance as Harley Quinn, who voiced the character from her creation on screen in the animated series. Anyways, back to boss fights. Besides going up against Bane, you'll also go up against Harley Quinn, sort of. As you chase after Harley, she'll basically corner herself in the maximum security wing of the facility, but also release horrifyingly insane patients into the facility. Arkham Asylum definitely isn't a kid's game. Anyway, for your fight with Harley, she's cornered herself in and she sends in goons to fight for her as she activates electronically charged floors. You'll defeat 3 waves of enemies while avoiding the floor, and then you'll defeat Harley. It is kind of a cop-out boss fight, but to be honest, a more traditional melee fight with Harley Quinn against Batman would be over just as quickly as the cutscene. And of course, once Harley fails to take out the B-Man, she then gets thrown into a cell and Joker leaves her there for the rest of the game. This game was made during a time when the Joker and Harley were still a duo. As you continue to chase after the Joker, you'll be hunted by Scarecrow, who acts like a bit like a Psycho Mantis from the Metal Gear Solid series, with one fourth wall breaking part where you'll actually think the game's crashed. During scripted moments of the game, Scarecrow will pump his fear toxin through the halls, causing Batman to hallucinate before the game transitions into a side-scroller. During these moments, you'll need to avoid the spotlighted gaze coming from Scarecrow as you platform your way through to a bat signal which will hurt the Scarecrow and cause the fear toxin to wear off. You'll go through this 3 times in the game, and the second time will introduce some combat mechanics. Scarecrow, using his Freddy Krueger-inspired fear injector, will stab the ground, causing skeletons to come out of the ground. It's a pretty straightforward combat scenario where if you move out of the combat arena and into Scarecrow's gaze, it's an immediate game over. The third time you go against him though, Batman will start to get used to the Scarecrow toxin and you'll start to fight against it. You'll not only have these side-scrolling platform moments, but you'll also go up against 3 waves of enemies, and defeating each wave will cause bat signals to turn on and damage Scarecrow. I'm not gonna lie too, after you defeat 3 waves of enemies, including 2 tightened goons, you'll wake up from the hallucination and see a heap of knocked out enemies around you, and it had me in stitches. After the third hallucination though, Scarecrow runs into the sewers and plans on dropping his toxin into the water supply to poison Gotham, and there's a reason why there's a sewer section in Arkham Asylum. We need to backtrack a moment though. As Joker plans on releasing and using the Titan formula on Gotham, Batman needs to work on a cure. Poison Ivy lets Batman know that there's a plant that will help with a cure, but it's only located in one place on the island, and that's in the sewers. Besides being a place where human waste goes, the sewer acts as Killer Croc's holding cell, and holy shit, this is where Arkham Asylum would scare the shit out of me, and I'm not gonna lie, replaying the game again, it still scares the shit out of me. After Scarecrow is taken by Killer Croc, and it's pretty gnarly, you'll need to go further into the sewers and find the relevant plants and harvest them for a cure. However, one plant spore won't be enough, and you need to go further into the sewers. You'll walk along wooden planks floating on water to move through the sewers. Now, moving too fast will cause more noise to ripple through the water, giving away your position to Croc, who's hiding underneath. Periodically, Croc will jump out of the water and charge at you. A quick double tap of the left trigger and throwing a batarang at Croc will activate his shock collar. A quick double tap of the trigger when throwing a batarang at Croc will activate his shock collar and send him back into the water. He'll also randomly start destroying wooden pallets and planks around you, causing you to run before you sink into the water. Now, this part isn't really a boss fight, as you don't fight Croc as Batman, but this moment is full of tension, and is a break from the repeated Predator combat traversal moments. Though you can basically break this part of the game when you're on the floating floors by crouching and walking rather than just walking slowly. When you've gotten enough spore samples, you need to make your way all the way back to the entrance, but Batman has already set up a trap for Killer Croc and he'll just fall through a trap floor and be gone. Again, it's a bit of a bummer that you don't fight Killer Croc, and this acts more of like a hide and seek scenario, but breaking up nearly 4 or 5 hours of repetitive gameplay, it was a pretty cool way of doing it. Immediately after this though, you need to stop Poison Ivy, who's been given Titan, and she's basically fucking up the whole island. Now, when you first start playing Arkham Asylum, police and Arkham Security hold down the island. Before Joker's goons take control, then the freaky and mentally insane patients that Harley released roam free and attack anything they see before there's more map updates. Poison Ivy, with Titan running through her veins, starts taking over the island, which will not only change external areas but also inside buildings. This idea is actually really cool, as you'll be revisiting many buildings countless times, and it's always a surprise to come back to a hall or a mansion that you've obviously visited before, and then seeing it affected by poison gas or giant roots entangling the room. Anyway, Ivy has been fucking up the island and you need to go after her, but basically you do this immediately after you've dealt with Killer Croc, and this is about 90% of the way through the main story. Her boss fight is pretty straightforward. You need to throw batarangs at her giant flytrap safety pod that she's protected by while avoiding enemies, plant spores and roots that are trying to kill you. But we haven't seen anything like this in the game before, and it does break up the constant combat or predator areas of the game. However, this fight is immediately after the Killer Croc sewer moment, and it's a bit of a waste. Rather than having an hour or two of more predator and combat, we just go from one boss fight to another. You defeat Poison Ivy before Joker literally shoots fireworks up into the sky, calling you to his position to end the game. We've been chasing the Joker for the entire game and we've finally caught up with him. You go to the visitor center and Joker will pit you against 2 Titan goons and a handful of henchmen. You'll defeat these goons pretty quickly before Joker hits you with a Titan dart and begs you to transform. Well, he actually tries to shoot Commissioner Gordon, but you do a bodyguard scenario.
Pow! No!
Being Batman, of course, you'll fight the transformation process and Joker will shoot himself in the face.
Nothing to live for. In the face! In the face!
Turning him into a Titan-infused monster with his spine popping out of his back. These Titan goons are edgy and brutal and remind me a little bit of the Abomination from the Hulk movies. Anyway, from chasing the Joker for about 5 to 6 hours, you'll go up against Titan Joker, and you'll never go up against normal Joker in Arkham Asylum, and you don't even fight him. Batman shoots himself with the Titan Cure so he doesn't transform, and you'll... Look, I can't say you'll fight the Joker, but you'll avoid his attacks for a brief period of time, and he'll then jump on top of a wall and showboat for a news helicopter. You'll then take out the same goons you've been doing for the entire game and then use the Batclaw to pull Joker off the wall and slam him into the ground. Do this 3 times and he'll fall through the floor, and that's the end of the fight and the end of the game. Batman Arkham Asylum has done some fantastic things up until this point, but my god, this last fight. Oof. Speaking of bad things, there are some issues I had replaying this. Now, obviously, if you've gotten this far, and thank you for sticking with me by the way, I'm playing the remastered edition with the updated visuals, and honestly, this title 100% needs to be remastered or remade again. This version of the game somehow looks worse than the original in some instances. Batman's face is completely different to it looks like where he's had lip filler, and his suit has changed. No, not a big deal for majority of casual fans, but the original suit for Batman in 2009 was grey and dark blue, rather than the remastered version being grey and black. At least it's not black on black like majority of the damn movie suits. Joker has been updated too, and he's lost some of his dark grittiness that made him stand out a bit more. Now, I played this on the Xbox One X on a 65-inch TV, I'm not bragging here anyone, but anytime I use my detective vision, the screen will flash white. This has been the only game where I've needed to take a break as I could hear my eyes screaming at me not to use detective vision. I don't think Arkham Asylum needs a remaster to this extent too. The Return to Arkham pack came with both Arkham Asylum and its sequel Arkham City, where a simple HD remaster would have been fine. Now, if you want to do anything touching the graphics of this title, give us a Resident Evil 2 styled remake. Now, there is also a fair amount of clipping in Asylum 2, and no real ragdoll physics where goons are defeated and knocked out. Batman's gauntlets will clip through his cape for no reason, and when you're crouching, Batman's giant back muscles will also pop through his cape. Finally, probably the biggest blunder is your first and final boss fight. Bane and Titan-affected goons are 100% the same, where every other boss fight in the game are completely different and keeps the gameplay fresh. You'll need to keep your distance from Bane or Titan henchmen, throw a batarang at their face so they run into a wall, and then wail on them until they're stunned, and so on and so forth. It's rinse and repeat. Joker, on the other hand, is a giant letdown. You'll spend the entire game chasing him and trying to stop the Joker, only for him to shoot himself with Titan, and then you don't even really fight him. Besides the fight, Joker shoots himself with Titan, and then he isn't dumbed down like other goons that he also shoots with Titan. But he's just a giant ripped version of himself and retains his personality and character. It's a bit weird. You'll avoid Titan Joker's drunken swing attacks before he retreats and showboats while his goons come after you. After you defeat 3 waves of goons, you'll then use the Batclaw to bring him down, pin him to the ground, beat him up, do it 3 times, and that's it. It is the biggest issue I had with this game, but the entire game up to this point is near damn perfect. There are also details in Arkham Asylum that are small touches for me that really made the game more immersive. When you're opening vents in the game, Batman will rip them open when there's no one around, but should there be enemies around and he doesn't want to alert anyone, he'll carefully pop them open and slide them off to the side. When you sneak up behind an enemy and you do a silent knockout, Batman will cover their mouth so he can't alert anyone. When you run around the halls or you run around in the game in general, the cape will flow beautifully and it will come to a stop and drape and hang off his body. The last Batman game we got before Arkham Asylum was EA's Batman Begins game, and the cape in that thing.
Alfred, we've got arson.
I've alerted the fire department, sir.
You should be able to find an exit through any of the...
As you face off against Batman's rogues gallery and perform heroic actions like avoiding bombs and using the Batmobile to shoot Bane into Gotham River, or even face off against hallucinations, Batman will change throughout the game as well. After your fight with Bane, Batman will have a slash on his Batsuit, and as you further progress, the suit will take more damage. His cape will rip, his cowl will take some damage and have some scratches and even some explosion marks on them. At the start of the game, the suit is pristine perfect, and with it the remaster it looks a little weird, but when you finish the game, the suit will look like it's been through hell. Batman's facial hair will even grow as well, and he'll have some pretty strong stubble by the end of the game. It's the kind of stubble that you'd use to sand down a block of wood. I'm also obviously not a fan of the changes to the graphics, but seeing the rain hit Batman and slide down his cape is something pretty. Finally, if you finish Arkham Asylum, it's not game over. You can still freely explore the island and collect any Riddler trophies or solve any riddles that you might have missed. Solving these riddles will reward you with more challenge mode maps and character models to explore in the menus. As you further progress in collecting trophies, you'll start to piss off the Riddler and even somewhat apprehend him. I just really enjoyed exploring the asylum and seeing the holding cells of my favourite DC villains. Yes, I know I'm a nerd, but I still enjoyed it. 2008 may have been the start of the MCU hype train and a fuckload of movies, but 2009 started the Batman Arkhamverse, and honestly, I'd take that over the MCU any day. Fuck, this game has basically created a combat system which has been used in countless other video games. Arkham Asylum acted a bit like a continuation of the fantastic animated series, and unlike majority of video games that released in the mid to late 2000s, wasn't attached to a movie. Arkham Asylum released in August 2009 and obviously released to positive reviews. After you finish the Joker at the end of the game, and depending on what difficulty you finished it on, you're given an end credit scene tease, which of course got everyone excited for a sequel, but that's a video for another time. And as at the time of this video, and even recording myself right now, I haven't even started working on it yet. I can't wait for Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad kills the Justice League, and I'm looking forward to moving on to what many consider to be the best in the Arkham series. I'll be going back and taking a look at the Arkham series between each new release reviews, and if there's something you want me to take a look at in Arkham City, hit me up in the comments below. If you enjoyed my first big breakdown video, a like, comment, share, subscribe would be a great way of helping me out. Batman Arkham Asylum was a big game for me back in 2009, but what about you? What was your first experience with the game or with the series in general? Let me know in the comments below.